over Glennon Doyle, move over Elizabeth Gilbert, move over Brene Brown. The world has a new guru.
Yes.
And it's Daphne from White Lotus. The show finished this week, this second season of the show. It was the finale. But Daphne Sullivan, I didn't know she had a surname.
She's just a Daphne.
Started this season of White Lotus. And if you haven't watched it, you don't really need to, because we are going to talk about something that's actually a theme in the show that's not specific.
But if you have watched it, then we have a very special subs episode that dropped yesterday, which is a deconstruction, a smart, a clever, some would say a genius deconstruction of the finale of
Em had to basically throw a bucket of water over us to stop us talking.
It was so good. Anyway, we'll put a link in the show notes. But Meghann Fahy, who played Sutton in The Bold Type, which was a show we all loved, it plays in White Lotus a very wealthy wife, or wife of a very wealthy man, who has 2 little kids, doesn't work, who seems to have a pretty lovely life. She's part of 2 couples who are on holidays together in Italy. And, you know, in another reality, she'd probably be a typical sort of Real Housewife character. She's got this lavish lifestyle. She wears beautiful, expensive clothing. She doesn't watch the news. She's not really worried about the world.
Can't remember whether she voted or not.
Can't remember. Isn't really across climate change.
It's a bit upsetting. So,
well, it's upsetting to some of the people she's on holiday with, but she's pretty happy with her life.
And no one had a better holiday than Daphne.
No one had a better holiday. And what was interesting about her progress through the season is how she sort of subverted this housewife narrative and tore down our expectations. Her husband cheats on her, right? And she sort of plays mind games, and throughout the course of the series, she reveals to this woman she's on holiday with, part of the other couple, that she has her own affairs. In the final episode, it's revealed to her that her husband has cheated for the second time in 1 week on this holiday. And a little shadow passes over her face before she sort of recomposes herself, and she says, you know, you can never really know what's going on in someone's head. No matter how much time you spend with them, there is always something unknown. And she's talking about, you know, her husband and the idea of fidelity. And she says, and this is the line that she said that's been really interesting.
That should have got her a Golden Globe nomination.
And the line is, I think you just do whatever you have to do to not feel like a victim of your life. And by this, she means that she has been having an affair with her trainer. Perhaps one of her children is the child of her trainer. After she says this, she goes off and probably has sex with someone else who's not her husband. And so it's a really interesting spin on the idea that you can have a husband that cheats on you or a partner that cheats on you, but refuse to be the victim. And we're living in a culture where, interestingly, the victim narrative, and I don't mean to say this in a facetious or a dismissive way, but being the victim of something, a real or perceived slight, gets you what? Sympathy, credibility, status, really, in our culture. What do you think about this idea of the anti-victim narrative? Was it refreshing, and does it have application?
I loved it. Because Jessie Stevens and I have had arguments before in the past about fidelity, specifically, right? And in terms of expectations on relationships, long-term relationships.
I don't like cheating. I've been on the record.
And I think that's fine.
Oh, good.
Don't worry, I think that's fine. You don't have to like cheating. But I think that what this show did brilliantly, and never better than in this depiction, was acknowledge the complexities of long-term relationships and the arrangements you can make within them, right? Because the thing is that the reason why she would normally be a victim is because all the things she said about, like, rich housewife, you know, no husband fools around, poor her, what a pathetic figure. And she's subverting that because she's saying, I've got a nice life. I quite like him. Every interaction you see of them together, whether they're alone or not, they seem to get along. They laugh, they wrestle, they kiss. They seem to like each other. But, you know, maybe not on a desperately deep level, but then we've already established that neither of them are desperately deep, right? Daphne doesn't read the news, doesn't know if she voted. Cameron only cares about money and status and being the biggest dick at the table, right? That's his thing. But they seem to quite like each other in their life, right? there are lots of different arrangements of relationships. And very often we have this very neat thing held up to us that you have to be each other's soulmates, each other's best friend. You also have to be relentlessly attracted to each other. So you have to want to have sex with them 3 times a week, at least every week for the rest of your life until you die. If either of you ever looks in another direction, then clearly your relationship is toxic and rotten and should not exist, right? That is a high bar that is very, very difficult for the universe to uphold. I'm not suggesting for a minute that everybody should be doing what Daphne and Cameron are doing, which is fucking everything that moves and having children with your trainer. But what I mean is, her statement about do whatever you do not to feel like a victim in your own life basically means work the situation to your advantage.
Yes.
So if your relationship is not the perfect dream, and whose is?
Yeah.
Like, are there things in it that are worth you staying there, and things that you can do outside that relationship, and they don't have to be sexual, that will make that relationship still work for you? I actually think it's such an interesting idea, because we just don't want to ever believe it, that if you don't tick all those boxes of the perfect relationship, there's nothing, then your relationship is a fake.
And is it worth just accepting your partner fully for who they are, or don't? But don't have an entire marriage for decades trying to change someone who won't.
Exactly right, because if you are married to a womanizer, or, I mean, there are other flaws other than cheating, obviously. Maybe they spend too much money, maybe they do this,
they work
maybe
too
they do
much.
that. They work too much, whatever. You can spend your life setting yourself up in opposition to that, right? Often the thing that that attracted you to somebody once you're in a long-term relationship with them drives you crazy. And you can, maybe you love the security they were going to provide by being, a breadwinner and working hard, but then once you're in that relationship, the fact that they're always working hard drives you crazy. And so you can spend your whole life fighting about that.
It's resentment that's the most corrosive thing. That's what everybody says about relationships.
Yeah. I really believe that you can't change people. I believe people change. I very much do believe that people change. I think we all change all the time, but I don't think they very often change because somebody's been yelling at them for 20 years. So I think in some ways what Daphne's given us that we either like or don't like is like, this is all right. It's a bit embarrassing for me that my holiday gets blown up with, like, did he sleep with my wife? Now he's giving money to that lady at the bar. Like, it's a bit embarrassing for me, but
I make it work. And I love that
had a busy holiday.
In the first episode, I think there was a moment of pity for Daphne, because she was this poor housewife.
Harper certainly pitied her.
Yes, absolute pity, and like,
clueless.
Oh my God. And both of them assumed, like, Ethan and Harper were both like, oh, she's being cheated on and she has absolutely no idea, and should I tell her? And that poor woman, she's got these kids. And what it showed was the arc was one of women are always more complicated than you think they are. You can try and paint me as a 2-dimensional housewife. That is not what I am. And I have far more agency than anyone is giving me credit for, which I thought was really cool.
And that was true of all the women in the series, actually.
Yes.
Well, maybe not Tanya in the end, but like, certainly that was also true of Lucia and Mia, who were the young sex workers. Like, the series didn't fall for simple tropes for women at all. And that is the one that you've just described is one of our most common. She's clearly a victim, poor thing.
And I think everyone judged her in that first episode. The other couple, but us as viewers, we judged her very, very quickly. And it turns out that we were wrong, and she subverted that. There's a great quote going around online. It's the tweet that says, "God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change," which is a very famous kind of quote. "The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom of Daphne to know the difference." And I think that's so true.
Mia, are you comfortable with her as some kind of new hero?
Yeah, I quite like, talk about turn that frown upside down, or turning lemons into lemonade. It's what Beyonce was saying, right? She did that Lemonade album about after she was cheated on by Jay-Z, one of the most powerful, successful, beautiful, sexy women in the world. Her husband cheated on her, and she said that she called the album Lemonade because it was something that her grandmother used to say, which is making lemonade out of lemons. Life hands you lemons and you make lemonade. So she made an award-winning album out of his infidelity, and that marriage survived as well. And so I do like that idea of subverting the narrative, not just within a relationship necessarily, but within life. That you know, being a victim does not have to be your currency. You can subvert that and tell yourself a different story about it.
And women can, and in this show they almost universally did, win the games that men created. They were all playing a game that they kind of hadn't, even the two of the sex workers. Yeah. Like, you're set up in this game that seems stacked against you. And then to watch women win it was really exciting. There was something else that Daphne said, which was, and this was early on, she said, I feel sorry for men. They think they're out there doing something really important, but they're just wandering alone. It was, you want to feel sorry for me, but actually the tragic figure here.
Men. Yeah.